Hello. Hi, how is everyone? Can you hear me? Hi, how is everyone? There we go. I'm gonna keep letting people in here. Hi. Hi. Welcome. Hey, hey.
Hello, good evening.
Hello. I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. Wow, it looks like people are already utilizing this. How is everyone?
Outstanding. Looking forward to moving forward here.
So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this comes out okay. Let's take a look and see how that looks. That's not bad. I'll zoom in a little bit more maybe. Is that gonna be easier to read? I think that's pretty good. Okay, so just so everyone knows, Rome is experiencing, I don't know what's going on with Rome right now. Everyone that signed up for Sonkei's book does not have access to the shared graph. I have my hands tied. I don't know what the answer is. You can access the graph by pasting in the URL. You can keep that tab open, but it's still annoying. We're trying to figure out what's going on. Matt McKinley does not know what it is yet, but I think there was trouble in Romeland today as well, so I know they're a little slammed. But we're doing our best. Okay, I'm just gonna keep letting people in here. All right, it's 9:27. We're a little early. Gotta go and bring this up. Let's go and bring that up over there. Boom. Any questions before we start? I am recording this to the cloud, by the way, so that way we can, for people that aren't able to join, because it is, time zones are crazy. So it's like, just because people can't join in doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to participate. And I want to make it a point to be able to upload these videos as fast as we can. The good news is moving forward, I'm recording everything to my computer. The bad news is the live session from week 1, they don't know what happened after the breakout rooms. So even for Coyle, the Dan Coyle book, the one that Matt Brockwell's running, they don't have video for that one either. So it's sort of lost in the abyss. But again, moving forward, I'm recording it to my computer, so we'll have all the breakout room stuff. All right, I'm just gonna let people keep falling in here. Open up the chat. There we go. How do you like the daily lessons so far? I'm cooking up a really good one for today. I'm late, by the way. I was supposed to have it in 2 hours ago. I'm doing my best here. I really am. Just dealing with people that aren't able to access the graph, and I mean, they're coming in from everywhere too: Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and it's just no one, no one has access to the graph. So I need to sort of walk them through how to get into the graph and give them the URL. So it's been a rough start, but I know that we're going to find our stride. I know we will. I know that we'll start picking up and we'll get to that point where we're not walking anymore, we're running. Gonna go ahead and close these tabs. And everyone can see the screen pretty good. So basically, if I go into this window here, if I go open up the sidebar, I'll go underneath book, let it load up, and then introduction. And then I'll close the sidebar. How's my audio, by the way? I've got a lav mic on. Hopefully that'll help get clear audio.
Seems good.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm just going to keep letting people in here. But by the way, with all the daily lessons as well, I have it where I felt like hump day was going to be the hardest. So Wednesdays, if I'm looking at sort of how like the arc of each week's lessons, I've put the most important lesson in the middle. And so that way it sort of creates this momentum of this, up and then down the hill kind of structure. So Monday, Tuesdays are going to lead up to what Wednesday is going to be about. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday is the sort of like crescendo. And the reason behind that is because that way it's I feel like during the middle of the week is when a lot of people are just like, okay, I'm too inundated with everything going on. I need more time. So I sort of structured how the daily lessons are the topics in that way, where it's sort of a ascend and then descend. I am going to go ahead and I'll go to paste the link to the URL just in case anyone's having trouble. Again, I recommend, I'm going to throw it in the chat right now, but I recommend, let me go ahead and, oops. Everyone in the meeting, I'll just throw it in the chat right now. Audio is clear, yes. Hey, Dalton. Again, Rome is having trouble. They have all hands on deck right now because they have another problem that they're dealing with, and the fact that people don't have access to the shared graph underneath. So if you look under, if you hit that caret here, it should say RBC3 how to take smart notes, but obviously it hasn't been populated. It hasn't even populated on my end either. So again, we don't know what's going on. I have a feeling it's because we just have too many people that have signed up, but it is what it is. I pasted the link. That's actually not a very good link. Let me paste another link real quick. I'll paste the actual link. So if you look in the chat there, that second link, romeresearch.com, RBC3, how to take smart notes. If you just copy paste that, maybe just store that on one of your notes or something. That'll take you directly into the shared graph. Again, everyone has read and write access to it at the moment. And we are doing our best to figure out why it's not populating for people in their sort of graphs and settings here. And then once you're in this page, if you go down to the book, you click on that. What's the best browser to access Rome? I prefer Safari because I like to write. And what Safari does is it corrects what I write without having to sort of just give me the squiggly lines. So I like that, so I can just keep writing. But I mean, Chrome, anything Chrome based, Brave. Brave is really good for privacy. Is there a way to copy this book into your own graph? I think when we talked to Sonke about that, he didn't want that, but I mean, you can copy paste it. So again, once you go into the sidebar here, go into the book, and I think we'll just go ahead and start reading. So everyone knows how to use Zoom, where you have the reactions at the bottom. If there's anyone that doesn't want to read, we can just pass. But what I'm going to do is this. I'd like to just have it where I have a list. My video just cut out. My video just cut out. Give me 1 second, guys. There we go. Just going to keep letting people in. I'm just going to go down the list, and if you want to pass, you can pass, but I'd like to have everyone participate. You don't have to turn your video on as long as we can hear your voice. I think it's a fun thing to do. And along the way, you can take notes if you'd like, but I really wanted to just focus on, in the moment, these discussions that happen as we're reading a book together. And it's 9:35 now. I'm just going to have people keep filing in, and as they do, I'm sure they'll just pick up on what we're doing. And again, I've got a list here of everyone all the participants, and I'm just going to go down the list, and you do need to unmute yourself as well. So just be aware of that. And then we'll just read through the book a paragraph at a time. And if at any time as you're reading, you want to stop and you want to talk about it a little bit, I'm open to that. That's what I really want this Rome Reading Room to be about. It's going to be unstructured and spontaneous. That's what I'm really hoping for. So I'm going to go ahead and go into introduction here. And I guess I'll start. Everybody writes, especially in academia. Students write and professors write, and nonfiction writers, who are the third group of people this book is aiming to help, obviously write as well. And writing doesn't necessarily mean papers, articles, or books, but everyday basic writing. We write when we need to remember something, be it an idea, a quote, or the outcome of a study. Oh, someone's typing. Where do we go? Where'd it go? We write when we want to organize our thoughts and we want to exchange ideas with others. Students write when they take an exam, but the first thing they do to prepare, even for an oral examination, is to grab pen and paper. We write down not only those things we fear we won't remember otherwise, but also the very things we try to memorize. Every intellectual endeavor starts with a note. Omar. Omar? Omar, would you like to read? I'm going to move to Antoinette. No? Beverly?
Writing plays such a central role in learning, studying, and research that it is surprising how little we think about it. If writing is discussed, the focus lies almost always on the few exceptional moments where we write a lengthy piece, a book, an article, or, as students, the essays and theses we have to hand in. At first glance, that makes sense. These are the tasks that cause the most anxiety and with which we struggle the longest. Consequently, these written pieces are also what most self-help books for academics or study guides focus on. But very few give guidance for the everyday note taking that takes up the biggest chunk of our writing.
Rick?
Okay, the available books fall roughly into two categories. The first teaches the formal requirements, style, structure, or how to quote correctly. And then there are the psychological ones, which teach you how to get it done without mental breakdowns and before your supervisor or publisher starts refusing to move the deadline once more. What they all have in common, though, is that they start with a blank screen or sheet of paper. But by doing this, they ignore the main part, namely note-taking, failing to understand that improving the organization of all writing makes a difference. They seem to forget that the process of writing starts much, much earlier than that blank screen, and that the actual writing down of the argument is the smallest part of its development. This book aims to fill this gap by showing you how to efficiently turn your thoughts and discoveries into convincing written pieces and build up a treasure of smart and interconnected notes along the way. You can use this pool of notes not only to make writing easier and more fun for yourself, but also to learn for the long run and generate new ideas. But most of all, you can write every day in a way that brings your projects forward.
Thank you, Rick. Omar, would you like to read? No? We'll keep
Okay,
going.
man.
Would you like to read?
Writing.
Yes.
You hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Writing is not but for research, learning, or study. It's the medium of all this work, and maybe that is the reason why we rarely think about this writing. The everyday writing, the note-taking, and draft making. Like reading, it is vital to what we do, but because we do it constantly, it escapes our attention. But while even the best reading technique will probably not make much of a difference to our writing. Any improvement in the way we organize the everyday writing, how we take notes of what we encounter and what we do with them, will make all the difference for the moment we do face the blank page, screen, or rather not, as those who take smart notes will never have the problem of a blank screen again.
I want to stop there because that's a strong statement to say. Those who take smart notes will never have the problem of a blank screen again. I mean, that's a big claim. And I think that's a big claim that I would actually back up. And yeah, we'll keep going. I know my video just cut out, but I've got like 3 monitors up right now. I'm recording and everything. So we'll just keep going as long as you can hear my voice. Next on the list, okay, the order completely changed. Chris Oakley, would you like to read?
Heck yeah, I can do. I just joined, so I'm a little late. I'm just reading out loud the next paragraph you're highlighting here.
Yes.
Okay.
How's the view, by the way? Is that going to be large enough on the screen?
Yeah, it looks fine for me.
Okay.
I'm on blown up my view here, so it's good. There's another reason that note-taking flies mostly under the radar. We don't experience any immediate negative feedback if we do it badly. But without an immediate experience of failure, there is also not much demand for help. And the publishing market working how it works, there's not much help in supply for this lack of demand either. It is the panic in front of the blank screen that brings students and academic writers to turn to the bookshelves full of self-help books on writing. Market publishers meet in droves by focusing on how to deal with this horse has already left the barn situation. If we take notes unsystematically, inefficiently, or simply wrong, we might not even realize it until we are in the midst of a deadline panic and wonder why there always seems to be a few who get a lot of good writing done and still have time for a coffee every time we ask them. And even then, it is more likely that some form of rationalization will cloud the view of the actual reason, which is most likely that the difference between good and bad note-taking. Some people are just like that. Writing has to be difficult. The struggle is part of the deal, are just a few of the mantras that keep too many from inquiring what exactly distinguishes successful writing strategies from less successful ones.
What was that? Any? By the way, so as we're reading along and as you're reading, if you wanted to just stop and state anything or talk about anything. I mean, it's sort of open-ended to that as well. And we'll keep going here. Kuban Awal? No? I'll ask one more time. Kuban Awal? How about Dalton? Once we have a list, then we'll just keep running with that list. I just want to make sure I can get through everybody. Dan?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. The right question is, what can we do differently in the weeks, months, or even years before we face the blank page that will get us into the best possible position to write a great paper easily? Very few people struggle with their papers because they don't know how to cite correctly or because they suffer from a psychological issue that keeps them from writing. Few struggle to text their friends or write emails. The rules of citation can be looked up, and there is no way that there are as many mental issues as papers postponed. Most people struggle for much more mundane reasons, and one is the myth of the blank page itself. They struggle because they believe, as they are made to believe, that writing starts with a blank page. If you believe that, you have indeed nothing at hand to fill it, and you have a very good reason to panic. Just having it all in your head is not enough, as getting it down on paper is the hard bit. This is why good, productive writing is based on good note-taking. Getting something that is already written into another written piece is incomparably easier than assembling everything in your mind and then trying to retrieve it from there.
Do you want to go on to the next paragraph? I'm setting something up right now.
Sure.
As you're
Hey,
going.
Bo, before you continue, I just wanted to say that one is the one that really hooked me into this book. Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
just think about a blank page and I literally go into like a panic mode. And I'm a more scientific and academic type writer, but still that thought of starting with nothing is just really kind of, it grinds me to a halt basically.
Now, I don't think you're alone in that either, though. I mean, who hasn't gone through that? I mean, and again, it's yeah. If anyone else wants to chime in on that, I mean, I think that's something that anyone that's ever had to write anything, especially under pressure, that's like right there.
I have two thoughts on that. Bo, I think of the screenwriter David Milch. There's a recording that you can find on YouTube of him giving a lecture to a creative writing class, probably graduate students. And I always remember a couple of lines. He says, the ego is the enemy of the imagination. And then the more pertinent one to this is you don't think your way, like in terms of writer's block or finding the right notebook or the right pen or pencil or the right tools, and the right environment and all this stuff. And he said, we don't think our way to right action, we act our way to right thinking. And, use right in place of act.
That is good. That is real good.
And I too, like the comment that you made about the blank page and the value of note-taking, not having to ever face the blank page. I mean, that was Luhmann's thing, right? I mean, he had so much research, so many of those note cards. That's why he was so prolific.
And I think there's also that idea of that structure as well, just having a lightweight structure. Something where it's you can do this without having to think about it. When I was getting coached by Sonke, that's one of the things that he kept on saying was that, you want to forget about the writing. You want to forget about the tool. You want to just, let me say it again. You don't want to be thinking about the tool. You just want to be thinking about the writing. And it's once we ease into that sort of flow state that he talks about often as well, it's just, I don't think there's anything that compares. We're going to keep going. Who else would like to read? Eric? Eric, would you like to read?
Yeah, sure. To sum it up, the quality of a paper and the ease with which it is written depends more than anything on what you have done in writing before you even made a decision on the topic. But if that is true, and I wholeheartedly believe it is, and the key to successful writing lies in the preparation. It also means that the vast majority of self-help books and study guides can only help you to close the barn door correctly and according to official rules, not just a moment, but many months after the horse has already escaped. Do I continue or there?
Yeah,
Just,
you want to do one more paragraph? That was a short paragraph.
Okay. With that in mind, it is not surprising that the single most important indicator of academic success is not to be found in people's heads, but in the way they do their everyday work. In fact, there is no measurable correlation between a high IQ and academic success, at least not north of 120. Yes, a certain intellectual capacity helps to get into academia, and if you struggle severely with an IQ test, it is likely that you will struggle to solve academic problems too. But once you are in, a superior IQ would neither help you to distinguish yourself nor protect you from failure. What does make a significant difference along the whole intelligence spectrum is something else. How much self-discipline or self-control one uses to approach the task at hand.
And then it's got the citations underneath. Yeah,
citations.
Nice. We'll keep going to the next paragraph. Is there anyone that would like to volunteer to read so I don't have to call on people? I mean, so by the way, if you go to the Roam Reading Room page, I just have right in the middle of the page, I have readers. I'm just makeshift doing this here. If you want to just add your name, but as I feel like we'll just keep circling once we have a full list. But if you want to add your name to that, let me show you one time real quick, just where this page is. So it's, if you shift click book into the sidebar, or sorry, wrong page. Shift click Roam Reading Room into the sidebar, and then you'll see it. After the Zoom links, you'll see a readers list here. For some reason, it's doubled, but I'm going to delete this. And I'm shift clicking this bullet point in order to highlight it into the sidebar. There we go. And we're just going to keep going.
Hey, Bo, it's not letting me edit that list. It says it's someone else's list
Can you
for the readers.
can you click where Eric is and then hit enter once? And you should be able to write your name.
Ah, that worked. Thank
Yeah.
you. All the little tricks.
Lee, would you like to read? This paragraph.
Whoops, I just
here.
muted as you said that. So sure. Oh, there we are. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not so important who you are, but what you do. Doing the work required and doing it in a smart way leads, somehow unsurprisingly, to success. At first glance, this is both good news and bad news. The good news is that we wouldn't be able to do much about our IQ anyway, while it seems to be within our control to have more self-discipline with a little bit of willpower. The bad news is that we do not have this kind of control over ourselves. Self-discipline, whoops, I'm losing my self-discipline or self-control is not that easy to achieve with willpower alone. Willpower is, as far as we know today, a limited resource that depletes quickly and is also not that much up for improvement over the long term. And then the reference here to Vamos there, etc. And who would want to flog oneself to work anyway?
Let me ask you this. What does that mean to you? What does this paragraph mean to you? Or you know, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. I mean, we'll just keep going. I mean, I'd rather just naturally let these conversations happen. I think that's going to be, unless you have something to say about it. But
Well,
I just
I
like
was-
this idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to just kind of parse it here, going back on it. I think it's To me, it's more about something more natural than what we try and force ourselves to do,
Yeah.
right?
Because I heard you perk up a little bit when it said, while it seems to be within our control to have more self-discipline with a little bit of willpower, I felt like something bubbled up right there for you.
Probably because I don't have a lot of self-discipline in writing.
I think
Well,
that's
go ahead.
yes.
I was going to say, I see it, and I've read, some of the book before, but he's just kind of setting the stage for you here that, the blank page, if you follow these methods, that doesn't have to be your enemy anymore. It's not going to be something you have to worry about. And you look at people who've been successful as writers and creating these large works, it's like, how do they do it? They must be superhuman. It's like, you don't have to be. This isn't about being superhuman. It's like, if you look at these techniques and you follow them and you put in the work early, then when you have to create the actual piece that you want to generate, all you're doing is putting it together like Legos.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. Roy?
Luckily, this is not the whole story. We know today that self-control and self-discipline have much more to do with our environments than with ourselves, and the environment can be changed. Nobody needs willpower not to eat a chocolate bar when there isn't one around, and nobody needs willpower to do something they wanted to do anyway. Every task that is interesting, meaningful, and well-defined will be done because there's no conflict between long and short-term interests. Having a meaningful and well-defined task beats willpower every time. Not having willpower, but not having to use willpower, indicates that you set yourself up for success. This is where the organization of writing and note-taking comes into play.
Nice. We'll go on to the next chapter.
I just think, can we just
Please.
talk about that a second?
Of course.
This is Beverly. I just think that is golden. And the reason why it's golden to me is it takes the willpower out of it, and it's setting it up to say, hey, everybody can be a success here if you just follow what I'm about to tell you. That's what that means to me. And I just think it's great.
So, Bo, what would you say, just like, I would struggle not with the willpower of reading books and writing notes, but I always took fleeting notes, which I didn't realize that's really what I was doing. But I consume information like so fast. And for me, it's like such a slowdown to think that I've got to like put the fleet notes and the permanent notes and the, like literature notes. And so I have the willpower to write notes and consume information and kind of process it, but to actually, like, I feel like instead of reading 4 books, I would maybe read 1 book. Mm-hmm. So I get that there's depth, there's a lot more depth and breadth, but if I've read, let's say, I don't really read a ton, I read a lot of articles and research papers and stuff, but if I've consumed, let's say 3 or 4 books, I'm still like processing the first book while I'm going through those other ones and interrelating them. I'm just not keeping good notes. So it's hard to think of it like, I guess the willpower is to be able to create something that's going to be like permanent, I guess, not just something that stays in the mind.
Mm-hmm. My question is, what's the purpose of rapidly consuming and distilling the information as you take it in?
Probably because I'm a knowledge junkie. I just find it so much fun to like learn a ton of things.
Yeah.
I find I have had that problem. I just blaze through things, and I'm just wanting to consume like a glutton, read as much as I can, and I'm going to learn so much. But it's like a leaky bucket, I retain some of it, but not as much as I'd like, right? So from what I've seen in the book, I think the key is being very judicious about what you take a note on. Like if you're reading an article, maybe you have one takeaway, right? You read a long form article, you'll have like 1 or 2 permanent notes. If you're reading a book, maybe 1 note per chapter. I don't know, people here, Bo, I mean, you've been doing this. What's your general view on the cadence of how many notes we should be making?
I think about when Lumen was thinking about the Zettelkasten and developing this, I think about what it would have been like to have lived in that time period, because they didn't have distractions as much as we do today. Like, I can't even get to work because I have noises coming from every corner of the room here. And for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with consuming information in order to sort of consume it quickly, in order to sort of give more of it away. But I think it makes me wonder how much of that is conditioned because of how society is today compared to how it was in the 40s or 50s. And for me, I think because information is so close and at hand, like Google, you can find an answer to literally anything. Because the questions and answers, you can even post something on Twitter. Because the questions and answers are so close at hand, I think the trick is almost, how can we actually slow down and focus? And in that focus, find not necessarily clearer information, but more fruitful information. And if there was a way to structure that in a way where anything that I've thought about, I'm able to see how I developed that thought. Mm-hmm. And I think when I think about fleeting notes and that process, I think there's a lot that has to do with that in itself. It's, yeah, I have a piece of information, but let me wring out what I can out of it, because I want to be able to look back at this later, which is asking a different question. It's not about how can I consume this information anymore. It's how can I use this later? And I feel like if we ask a different question, we'll get a different answer.
And Samantha, I can relate to what you're talking about this sort of perpetual consumption. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I read this book a while ago, and now I'm circling back to it, which is ironic given the point I'm about to make. But one of the things that I'm always doing is I have a sensation when I'm reading something online that's some kind of temporary thing. And if I really want to read it, I have to have it in print. I do the same thing with books. I read a lot of books quickly. I'll, jot a line in the side, but with this sort of vague mental idea that I'm going to eventually come back and really digest this information, but this is the superficial skim stage, and I'll go on. And the reality is there are certain books that I've gone back to 4 or 5 times. And I was thinking about this is like, what would I lose and what would I gain by digesting certain books in depth and other things much more superficially? And one of the things that has occurred to me is I've wasted so much time going back to a book, trying to find the one point in it that I really wanted to use. Mm. And that cost me more time than it would have to, when I was reading that book, extract that point and memorialize it in a way that it was now in my brain in a way I can add something new on top of it. It reminds me of a great series of YouTube videos by a jazz pianist, and I'm blanking on his name, Bill Evans, I think. And he talks about people that kind of superficially learn a riff on the piano, and then they try and layer the next skill on top of it, but they haven't mastered that first skill. And so they're faking it for the second one. And I think that's what I've been doing most of my life with my reading. So that's my goal here, is to figure out whether it's true or false, but that may not be your point at all. I may have missed it.
But I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, wow. That was, yeah, I mean, I think why I'm so excited is because I'm exactly that person that you described, We're going to go on to the next chapter here. And I'll scroll up, and David.
Everything you need to know. Until now, writing and note-taking techniques were usually taught without much regard to the overarching workflow. This book aims to change that. It will present you with the tools of note-taking that turned the son of a brewer into one of the most productive and revered social scientists of the 20th century. But moreover, it describes how he implemented them into his workflow, so he could honestly say, I never force myself to do anything I don't feel like. Whenever I am stuck, I do something else. A good structure allows you to do that, to move seamlessly from one task to another, without threatening the whole arrangement or losing sight of the bigger picture.
Vincent, would you like to read?
Yeah. A good structure is something you can trust. It relieves you from the burden of remembering and keeping track of everything. If you can trust the system, you can let go of the attempt to hold everything together in your head, and you can start focusing on what is important, the content, the argument, and the ideas. By breaking down the amorphous task of writing a paper into small and clearly separated tasks, you can focus on one thing at a time, complete each in one go, and move on to the next one. A good structure enables flow, the state in which you get so completely immersed in your work that you lose track of time and can just keep on going as the work becomes effortless. Something like that does not happen by chance. Should I keep going?
Yeah, if you'd like.
Okay. As students, researchers, and nonfiction writers, we have so much more freedom than others to choose what we want to spend our time on. Still, we often struggle the most with procrastination and motivation. It is certainly not the lack of interesting topics, but rather the employment of problematic work routines that seems to take charge of us instead of allowing us to steer the process in the right direction. A good structured workflow puts us back in charge and increases our freedom to do the right thing at the right time.
Samantha?
Having a clear structure to work in is completely different from making plans about something. If you make a plan, you impose a structure on yourself and it makes you inflexible. To keep going according to plan, you have to push yourself and employ willpower. This is not demotivating, but also unsuitable. This is not only demotivating, but also unsuitable for an open-ended process like research, thinking, or studying in general, where we have to adjust our next steps with every new insight, understanding, or achievement, which we ideally have a regular basis, not just an exception. Even though planning is often at odds with the very idea of research and learning, it is the mantra of most study guides and self-help books on academic writing. How do you plan for insight, which by definition cannot be anticipated? It is a huge misunderstanding that the only alternative to planning is aimless messing around. The challenge is to structure one's workflow in a way that insight and new ideas can become the driving forces that push us forward. We do not want to make ourselves dependent on a plan that is threatened by the unexpected, like a new idea, discovery, or insight. I can do another if you like. Unfortunately, even universities try to turn students into planners. Sure, planning will get you through your exams if you stick to them and push through, but it will not make you an expert in the art of learning, writing, note-taking. There's research on it. Planners are also unlikely to continue with their studies after they finish their examinations. They're glad it's over. Experts, on the other hand, would not even consider voluntarily giving up what has already proved to be rewarding and fun. Learning in a way that generates real insight is accumulative and sparks new ideas. The fact that you invested in this book tells me that you would rather be an expert than a planner.
Would you like me to go ahead?
Who's up next? Colby?
Yes, Colby.
Okay, and if you are a student seeking help with your writing, sorry. Can you hear me? And if you're a student seeking help with your writing, the chances are that you're already aiming too high, because it is usually the best students who struggle the most. Good students wrestle with their sentences because they care about finding the right expression. It takes them longer to find a good idea to write about because they know from experience that the first idea is rarely that great and good questions do not fall into their laps. They spend more time in the library to get a better overview of the literature, which leads to more reading, which means that they have to juggle more information. Having to read more does not automatically mean having more ideas. Especially in the beginning, it means having fewer ideas to work with because you know that others have already thought of most of them.
I want to make a comment on that. I mean, that's kind of, I think, a struggle that I have a lot. You know, as you're trying to think of, you're trying to edit and critique and refine while you're writing. Those stages when you're creating your first set of notes, you shouldn't do. It's just like get something down, and then you can go and refine it later, and then maybe work on your permanent note. You know, kind of refine it. But I think the point is, you know, just get something out first. Don't struggle to make it perfect right off the bat.
Were you a good student?
Me, decent. You know, I think I probably spent more time, trying to make things just in general. I think it's things need to be perfect before they go out into the world, and it's not the case. I mean, you look now at a lot of things on Twitter. You know, people do their thinking out loud on Twitter, and they get feedback there, and then they'll take that, they get over and polish it, and then write a first article. So that there's different methods, you know, to have their drafts. You know, they're doing their drafts in public. It's a scary thing to do, but it works out well, you know, if you have the confidence to do it.
Can I want to just piggyback on that real quick. I love how you said that it's a scary thing to do, because I think about, you know, the end result is we want to have a collection of declarative statements or these original insightful thoughts. And I think about, I think Beverly would already know this because me and her had a session before, but it's just like this idea that the minute that we put something out there, that's the minute that it becomes objectified and judged. And I equate it to public speaking. And why that's a number one fear is because we're having an original thought. And that original thought is now in the public. And some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. But that fear is something that I think we need to establish that it's true. It's a real thing. And if a structure can provide us with a strong enough, stable base to where even if it becomes judged and objectified, we can still declare it with 100% clarity that this is our thought, then I think that fear sort of melts away. Anyways, that was my
hey,
waxing
Bo, I
philosophical.
just wanted to add one thing there. For me, just that sentence on where to go. Oh yeah, good students wrestle their sentences because they care about finding the right expression. I've always struggled with that, not necessarily because a good student or not, but because when I write it, I always have this thought in my mind that I got to get it right. I got to get something that's useful to be preserved. I've never really thought about it until I got into this whole, you know, the whole Rome community and some of the other writings. And I haven't read this book yet, by the way. But the thought of getting it down is, I think it was Chris who said it, and then coming back and processing it later, that's something I've never really occurred to me to do. Right. And so I struggle to get it right as I'm writing it. And then I find even now as we're doing this, that as I'm struggling to get that down and get it right, I've missed the rest of the conversation that's been going on in the background. And so I'm losing things because I'm so fixed on getting it right the first time.
One of the best ways I've ever seen that articulated is I can't remember the name of the book now, but it was a professor talking about there are actually two distinct pieces of writing for articulation and writing for communication. And the writing for articulation is for you to be able to actually see your own thoughts and see if you've written down what you actually think. And then the second stage of the process is to make sure that those thoughts are communicated to other people in the way you intend them to be. And that was the clearest thing in my mind of like seeing that as very separate stages, because you always hear the writing about don't try and edit it, but that always felt like lazy and sloppy to just like, I don't want randomness on the page. I want some actual coherent thought. But it's like that first act is really articulating what your own thought is, and don't worry about whether somebody else would understand it yet. It was very helpful to me.
Antoinette, I believe.
I guess I wanted to add on that. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
last sentence, especially in the beginning, it means having fewer ideas to work with because you know others have already thought of them. That really resonates with me because I really struggle with the curse of knowledge, and I just literally just posted about this on Twitter, but basically like I struggle with always thinking to myself that my ideas are obvious, but that's like common for experts or like gurus. Like they think everyone else kind of knows what they know, and for me, that's what prevents me from kind of sharing my ideas or thinking more in public. Is kind of thinking, oh, like this is already thought of. You know, this is not really original. Yeah.
God, I love this, by the way. I mean, we're a group of literally strangers talking about how bad we are at things. And no, I'm serious. And it's just, it's honest. And I feel like that vulnerability to say, okay, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know, I'm scared of this. I'm a perfectionist, and it's just, I just feel like with that mutual vulnerability, it's like we can really help each other grow through it. And yeah, thank you for that. That was good.
But
That was really
one
good.
other thing I'll say on that is, I think we've all kind of touched on the fear of putting something out in front of strangers and being judged. But like you're saying, but we're here in a room full of strangers, and I don't feel at all uncomfortable about saying any of this stuff with any of you. So I think if you put out something to the world that's decent, either it'll be well received, or people, we're afraid of the edge cases of the lunatic that's going to come out and jump all over us. When I don't think that's as prevalent as we give it credit to.
What about I find like with Twitter, you can put a thought out there or respond to somebody and add to something they've already put on there, and then they don't really respond. So there's kind of a little bit of like, we're all afraid to put something, to start something, but I'm afraid that just people won't engage. I don't mind if someone has a different perspective or something to add to it, but to like put the effort in to put a thought out there and then just not have people engage with it, that's, I think, more scary than not having people engage at all. I'd rather have people come in and say, are you kidding me? Do you have any idea about this, this, and this? I'd be like, dang, thanks for telling me that. I would have known that if I didn't put the idea, but most people just like, oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about, or I don't know what they're talking about, and then they don't engage.
Or that like first like 20 minutes when you post something and you're like, oh, this is really powerful. And then like, chirp, 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 nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I can relate to that because I've sometimes put some threads up in that, and I put all this effort into it thinking, oh, this is going to be a great thread. Then like a day or two later, not a single tweet, not a like, nothing. It's like, oh, why do I waste my time trying to make it so coherent to others?
Yeah, I think on that, talking about engagement is, for me, I'm going to start putting some writing out there, and I'm just like, well, I'm not very good at it now. So I'm fine if there's no engagement, no audience, just publish, right? You'll get better as you go. And then by the time you do start getting engagement, you start building an audience, you've already, you've kind of got some skills, the training wheels are off, and then you're confident, and you can confidently engage with people. People are always saying, I look back at my early stuff and I'm embarrassed. So in that sense, if I'm going to put out something that I'll be embarrassed about in a year, I'm fine not getting engagement on it. I think it's more important to do the work and be confident that as long as you keep showing up, then the audience will show up as well, and you'll be better prepared when they do.
Although I think that if you get engagement, that will make you sharper faster.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. But don't stress, you know, if you intend to put in the work over the long term, don't stress if you don't get it right away like you want to. And then as long as it's public, you know, somebody might come 6 months back and find something you put and then, you know, ask you about it. You're like, oh yeah, okay. Thanks for asking.
Hey, Bo, you probably want to go on, but maybe you know how to do this. So I've read probably 3/4 of the book on Kindle, and I had highlights which have synced to Readwise and then moved into my Roam already. So if I'm going through the book again a second time and I write different notes on my Kindle, is that gonna like mess up when it gets to my Readwise and then gets into my Roam?
I actually don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I mean, I could shoot. Have you tried reaching out to Tristan at Readwise? He always has his DMs open, and he's the creator of it. And
Okay.
I mean, he would know the answer to that one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Something you might consider, Samantha, and I think this is part of the method when you talk about fleeting notes and then the different stages in notes. You might take the you know, edit the original highlights that you made. I mean, do you just make highlights, or do you also attach notes to those highlights?
Well, I've recently switched to Kindle just because, yeah, and I have an iPad Pro and it's my freaking favorite tech right now. So I just like live on the thing when I can sit on the couch.
Yeah.
But I don't take as many notes. Whereas when I wrote a book, I would write notes in the books. Like I'm just I write all over the books, highlight, write lines, put notes in the margins. And I don't have photographic memory completely, but I can remember where something is in a book. So when I want to call on information, I grab the book and I can usually remember what area it is in the book and what side of the page it's on. And then I can quickly see my notes. But in Kindle, I can't do that because there's no physical space. So I'm trying to figure out a method because I'm not writing notes anymore now that I'm in Kindle. A few, but not very much because I don't type very well. So
why don't you tweet that out? Why don't you tweet that out? That will get a lot of traction because people, yeah, just hashtag Roam Cold and ask that question.
Like in November, I have like 70 people on my Twitter. I don't think anyone's going to read my Twitter.
If you do hashtag Roam Cold, people will pick up on it. But
Okay.
Let's keep going. David, I know you had your hand up.
Sorry, what did you
going?
on Twitter, Bo?
Say that again.
What did you want me to say on Twitter?
Just do hashtag Roam Cold, and then people will check that.
Yeah, sorry. What was I going to say though? That now that I'm on Kindle, I don't take notes?
No. Just how does Readwise Sync work with Kindles when you do secondary highlights?
Okay.
Antoinette, would you like to read? I know I saw your video pop up. There you are.
Good students also look beyond the obvious. They peek over the fences of their own disciplines. And once you have done that, you cannot go back and do what everyone else is doing. Even if you now must deal with heterogeneous ideas that come without a manual on how they might fit together. All that means is that a system is needed to keep track of the ever-increasing pool of information, which allows one to combine different ideas in an intelligent way with the aim of generating new ideas. Can I continue po? Poor students do not have any of these problems as long as they stick within the boundaries of their discipline and read only as much as they are told to, or less. No serious external system is required, and writing can be done by sticking with the usual formulas of how to write a scientific paper. In fact, poor students often feel more successful until they are tested because they don't experience much self-doubt. In psychology, this is known as the after effect. Poor students lack insight into their own limitations, as they would have to know the vast amount of knowledge out there to be able to see how little they know in comparison. That means that those students who are not very good at something tend to be overly confident, while those who have made an effort tend to underestimate their abilities. Poor students have no trouble finding a question to write about. They neither lack opinions nor the confidence that they have already thought them through. They also won't have trouble finding confirming evidence in the literature, as they usually lack both interest and skill to detect and think through disconforming facts and arguments.
Where are you?
I'm at the I'm currently I'm living in the Philippines po.
Oh, wow. I love listening to the roosters.
Hello. We're in the province here in the Philippines po. Not currently in lockdown because I'm taking online education po, but I'm living temporarily in a city po, but uh, I went home po because of the pandemic po.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is not my first language.
Oh, you're doing great.
You're doing fantastic.
Thank you.
David, would you like to read?
Sure, I already did, but I'm happy to read again.
Oh, are you not on the list here? Where were you?
Oh,
no.
Are there two of us?
I don't. Oh, sorry.
Just me? Must be just me.
I'll give you this one, and then we'll circle back over to Beverly. I didn't see you on the list.
Ah, perfect. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let's finish it out, and then back up to Beverly. Sorry.
Where are we now? Good students? Okay.
Good students, yeah.
Good students, on the other hand, constantly raise the bar for themselves as they focus on what they haven't learned and mastered yet. This is why achievers who have had a taste of the vast amount of knowledge out there are likely to suffer from what psychologists call imposter syndrome, the feeling that you are not really up to the job, even though of all people, they are. This book is for you, the good students, ambitious academics, and curious nonfiction writers who understand that insight doesn't come easy, and that writing is not only for proclaiming opinions, but the main tool to achieve insight worth sharing. You like that one?
Sorry about that, Beverly.
Chapter 1.1, good solutions are simple and unexpected. There is no need to build a complex system, and there is no need to reorganize everything you already have. You can start working and developing ideas immediately by taking SMART notes. Complexity is an issue, though. If you don't aim to develop a grand theory and just want to keep track of what you read, organize your notes, and develop your thoughts, you will have to deal with an increasingly complex body of content, especially because it is not just about collecting thoughts, but about making connections and sparking new ideas. Most people try to reduce complexity by separating what they have into smaller stacks, piles, or separate folders. They sort their notes by topics and subtopics, which makes it look less complex, but quickly becomes very complicated. Plus, it reduces the likelihood of building and finding surprising connections between the notes themselves, which means a trade-off between its usability and usefulness. Thankfully, we don't have to choose between usability and usefulness. Quite the contrary. The best way to deal with complexity is to keep things as simple as possible and to follow a few basic principles. The simplicity of the structure allows complexity to build up where we want it on the content level. There is quite extensive empirical and logical research on this phenomenon. For an overview, see the references. Then taking smart notes is as simple as it gets.
Quick question. It's probably clear to others, but as opposed where he says complexity where we want it on the content level, as opposed to what? What is the alternative level of complexity?
Complexity in the structuring of the notes, complexity in the process, complexity in the all the different ways of organizing things, the complexity of I need to have this, and this in order. The hardest part with a Zettelkasten is actually structuring it once you have all your information in front of you. Then it's really the sort of second and third drafts of like getting this idea clearly out.
Yeah, that's why I struggle the most is when it comes to the structure and everything. Like when I was doing my note system, something else before, it wasn't so bad. But then when I got to Roam, there's so many options. But then it's like, well, to put over here, to do this, to make it a reference, does it become a page? Do I nest this? Don't I nest this?
I think for me, the litmus test is if I can leave the system without even thinking about it for a month and come back to it, am I going to know exactly where everything is going to be? Can I get into that exact same flow state? That's the sort of litmus test for me.
Yeah, it seems like what he's saying here is, anything you've done before, putting things in folders or using tags, you're having to do two jobs. One is writing the note, and the second job is knowing the system. And he's saying here with this SmartNote system, the system will take care of itself. You'll find your notes, they'll surface when you need them. Then it allows you to put all your focus into creating the notes. That's how I see it from the parts I've read so far.
Let's keep going. Rick?
Yeah. Another item of good news regards the amount of time and effort you have to put into getting started. Even though you will change considerably the way you read, take notes and write, there's almost no preparation time needed, except for understanding the principle and installing one or two free programs. It is not about redoing what you have done before, but about changing the way of working from now on. There's really no need to reorganize anything you already have. Just deal with things differently the moment you have to deal with them anyhow. There is more good news. Oh, good. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We only need to combine two well-known and proven ideas. The first idea lies at the heart of this book and is the technique of the simple slip box. I will explain the principle of this system in the next chapter and show how it can be implemented in the everyday routines of students, academics, or nonfiction writers. Thankfully, there are digital versions for all major operating systems available, but if you prefer, you can also use pen and paper. In terms of productivity and use, you will still easily surpass those who are taking not so smart notes.
My turn?
Want me to go ahead, or is Omar there?
Okay. The second idea is equally important. Even the best tool will not improve your productivity considerably. If you don't change your daily routines, the tool is embedded in you. Use of the Ferris card won't help you much if you don't have proper routes to let it on. Like every change in behavior, a change in working habits means going to a phase where you are drawn back to your old ways. The new way of working might feel artificial at first, and not necessarily like what you intuitively do. That is normal. But as soon as you get used to taking smart notes, it will feel so much more natural that you will wonder how you would ever able to get anything done before. Routines require simple, repeatable tasks that can become automatic and fit together seamlessly. Only when all the related work becomes part of overarching and interlocuted process, where all bottlenecks are removed, can significant change take place, which is why none of typical 10 mind-blowing tools to improve your productivity, which you can find all over the internet, will ever be of much help. The importance of an overarching workflow is the great insight of David Allen's Getting Things Done. There are few serious knowledge workers left who haven't heard of GTD, and it is for a good reason. It works. The principle of GTD is to collect everything that needs to be taken care in one place and process in a standardized way. This doesn't necessarily mean that we actually do everything we are intended to do, but it forces us to make clear choices and regularly check if our tasks still fit into the bigger picture. Only if we know that everything is taken care of, from the important to the trivial, we can get let go and focus on what is right in front of us. Only if nothing else is lingering in our working memory and taking up valuable mental resources can we experience what Allen calls a mind-like water, the state where we can focus on the work right in front of us without getting distracted by competitive thoughts. The principle is simple but holistic. It is not a quick fix or a fancy tool. It doesn't do the work for you, but it does provide a structure for you every day. For our everyday work that deals with the fact that most distractions do not come so much from our environment, but our own minds.
Well, you're getting pretty excited there, Bo.
He says the most distractions do not come so much from our environment but our own minds.
Yeah.
Jeez.
One thing I'll say about that, years ago, it took, kind of dipped my toes into the water of GTD. And the first thing they do is say, just take everything that's in your mind, the projects that you have, things you need to do, which he calls open loops, right? Things that you want to do, but you haven't completed yet. Just take everything and get it out of your head and onto a piece of paper. And I did that at that time. And it was the biggest relief. I felt like 10 tons of bricks have been taken off my shoulders. Now, I didn't have good systems. This was long ago, back before any of these tools. So I didn't keep up with it. But then I saw the book, Taking Smart Notes, and a tweet from Sanka that mentioned Rome. And then between the two of them, I'm like, this is it. I'm no more waiting. This is where I'm planting my flag. And I'm just going to have to trust that this system, the note-taking, the Zettelkasten system in Rome will allow me to find, I can put it there and I'll find it when I need it. So I'm putting my trust in that, but
you're not alone. I've vested
that's where I'm
everything I
going.
have. I think there's lots of people that have vested everything they have into this.
Yep.
Well, I was going to say that's an interesting connection between GTD because, Chris, like you said, I've found it, years ago, right after David Allen wrote the book, and his description of, mind like water, which I know comes from his martial arts training, but it's that sense of relief and comfort knowing that things are where you can find them and you don't have to keep them in your mind. But I always focus that as being what he talks about, which is task management. But I can see now in the dialogue that this is an extension of that into really managing your knowledge and your ideas above and beyond the day-to-day tasks and the goals and the projects that you have. So that's an interesting, paradigm connecting the two.
I like that last sentence where he says, most distractions do not come so much from our environment, but our own minds. But I actually think our mind is our environment.
True. Yeah. I mean, hopefully, we get to a point where our environment is calm. We trust that we can work in it. Okay, I think I'm next on the list, so let's continue. Unfortunately, David Allen's technique cannot simply be transferred to the task of insightful writing. The first reason is that GTD relies on clearly defined objectives whereas insight cannot be predetermined by definition. We usually start with rather vague ideas that are bound to change until they become clearer in the course of our research. Writing, oh, it's funny, he's got his own little reference to himself there. Writing that aims at insight must therefore be organized in a much more open manner. The other reason is that GTD requires projects to be broken down into smaller, concrete next steps. Of course, insightful writing or academic work is also done one step at a time, but these are most often too small to be worth writing down, looking up a footnote, rereading a chapter, or writing a paragraph, or too grand to be finished in one go. It is also difficult to anticipate which step has to be taken after the next one. You might notice a footnote, which you quickly check on. You try to understand a paragraph and need to look up something for clarification. You may make a note, go back to reading, and then jump up to write down a sentence that formed in your mind. I'll do the next one too. Writing is not a linear process. We constantly have to jump back and forth between different tasks. It wouldn't make any sense to micromanage ourselves on that level. Zooming out to the bigger picture does not really help either, because then we have next steps like writing a page. That does not really help with navigating the things that you have to do to write a page, often a whole bunch of other things that can take an hour or a month. One has to navigate mostly by sight. These are probably the reasons why GTD never really caught on in academia, although it is very successful in business and has a good reputation among the self-employed.
All right, it looks like I'm next. What we can take from Alan as an important insight is that the secret to a successful organization lies in the holistic perspective. Everything needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, the neglected bits will nag us until the unimportant tasks become urgent. Even the best tools won't make much of a difference if they are used in isolation. Only if they are embedded in a well-conceived working process can the tools play out their strengths. There is no point in having great tools if they don't fit together. I'll just do the next one as well. When it comes to writing, everything from research to proofreading is closely connected. All the little steps must be linked in a way that will enable you to go seamlessly from one task to another, but still be kept separate enough to enable us to flexibly do what needs to be done in any given situation. And this is the other insight of David Allen. Only if you can trust your system, only if you really know that everything will be taken care of, will your brain let go and let you focus on the task at hand. That is why we need a note-taking system that is as comprehensive as GTD, but one that is suitable for the open-ended process of writing, learning, and thinking. Enter the slip box.
Dun, dun, dun.
I was going to say there should be music right there, shouldn't there? Perfect.
Let's go to the next chapter. Oh, are you guys having fun, by the way? I mean, I'm enjoying this. I don't know if we're supposed to participate more, if we're just supposed to barrel through the book or not, but I feel like it's a pretty good balance, and I'm having fun.
I'm enjoying.
Yeah, it's great.
Hey, Bo, it'd be nice if you have anything that you remember from when you studied with Sankey. If you're like, oh, this reminds me of this. I love that when you're like, it really helps.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to finish?
It just helps add like, it's not really a physical layer, but in some ways it feels physical to me, that it's something that I can implant a memory into. It helps a lot to go, oh yeah, that's the section he talked about this, and this is what Sankey was trying to say, or another way to look at it or reframe it. So I like it when you do that.
Okay. I mean, I just don't want to, I have a lot, like I'm biting my tongue really.
But if you have to fight really hard, then you should just let go and then just wait.
well, here's the thing. Really what I want to do is I want to be able to take all of that and put it into each one of the daily lessons. And that's what I'm planning on doing. Like that's the whole game plan, is that all these things that have sort of distilled and then have it where you can go back to it at a later time as well. So that way the experience is shared, and then it's also, you can go back to the experience because you can just rewatch the video. But but I will interject wherever I deem like, oh dude, I just have to say this, or
okay.
Plus I'm enjoying listening to everyone here too.
Well, it kind of like what you say embeds to the section of the book for me. So it's kind of like, when I was saying, I will remember where something was in the book or relative place and what side of the book it was on. But like when you talk, I'm like, oh, it kind of like plants it for me. So I have a spot to plant to, I guess. So when I go back to the book and I'm like, oh, that's right, it's at the beginning of the Kindle book in, you know, the introduction. So it just helps kind of like almost like little memory palace-ish for me, if you will.
Yeah.
Hey, Samantha, I don't know if you noticed, but you're in the minute since you posted your tweet on Twitter, Tristan from Readwise has already responded.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm multitasking. I'm trying to do 10 things at once, but yeah, I saw that. I was about to reply back to him. So yes.
I love that. That is awesome. That is so awesome. No, Tristan. Tristan is he's just amazing.
Oh, see, I didn't know he's from Readwise. I just thought it was somebody from Rome. So that's even sweeter yet. I had just glazed over it. Yeah, he says on Readwise there won't be any duplicates. Only new highlights will sync to the same page. So now I know when it comes over from Readwise, you get a date on it. So I'm going to just ask him to clarify if then it'll just add a date for a new, because it tells you when you've synced them to Readwise, if it'll cover the old date or it'll put both dates. I guess I can find out when I bring it in.
It depends on your settings and like how you have it set up in your room and whether or not it's adding the date. Because if it's like the default settings, when it syncs, it'll add the date that it syncs.
Mhm.
But some people like take that out. So it depends on what settings you have.
Yeah, I have mine set to put that in there. I just wasn't sure if it would like overwrite it or not. So
It won't overwrite it. It'll just add a new link, a new reference to
Okay.
the same information.
Okay, sweet. I just don't want to like overwrite something from before. So anyway, that's why I want to make sure I had some clarification before I start writing notes in my Kindle again. Thank you, everyone.
And Bo, out of curiosity, how late are we going to tonight?
I don't know until you guys are until it was
whatever.
like
Okay.
Yeah, until you guys are like, okay, I'm sick of you all leaving, shutting it down. I still have to get the daily lessons done for today too, but it's fine. Who's next? Dan?
Is it my turn or is it Dan?
Eric?
Okay, Eric, I think.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It is the 1960s, somewhere in Germany. Among the staff of a German administration office is the son of a brewer. His name is Nicholas Luhmann. He went to law school, but he has chosen to be a public servant, as he did not like the idea of having to work for multiple clients. Fully aware he is not suited for a career in administration, as it involves a lot of socializing, he excuses himself every day after his 9-to-5 shift and goes home to do what he liked most, reading and following his diverse interests in philosophy, organizational theory, and sociology. Whenever he encountered something remarkable or had thought about what he read, he made a note. Now many people read in the evening and follow their interests, and some even take notes. But for very few, it is the path to something as extraordinary as Luhmann's career. After collecting notes for a while, in a way most people do, commenting in the margins of a text or collecting handwritten notes by topic, Luhmann realized his note-taking was not leading anywhere. So he turned note-taking on its head. Instead of adding notes to existing categories or the respective texts, he wrote them all on small pieces of paper, put a number in the corner, and collected them in one place, the slip box.
Okay, I guess I'm next. Oh. He soon developed new categories of these notes. He realized that one idea, one note, was only as valuable as its context, which was not necessarily the context it was taken from. So he started to think about how one idea could relate and contribute to different contexts. Just amassing notes in one place would not lead to anything other than a mass of notes. But he collected his notes in a slip box in such a way that the collection became much more than the sum of its parts. His slip box became his dialogue partner. main idea generator and productivity engine. It helped him structure and develop his thoughts. And it was fun to work with because it worked.
I'm biting my tongue, but I have to say something. Like this right here, it's context, the context in which that note was created and how it connects to other notes. That solves the problem of needing to find and needing to consume everything, because it relates to other things. But then it's also this idea of an idea generating machine, this dialogue partner. And the more that I think about what that means, it's the more that I see how powerful a Zettelkasten really is. And it's not, I don't think it's for everybody. I know students that probably wouldn't use this because they have to have something at a specific time and they have to learn something about this topic with this result. And I think with the Zettelkasten, for me personally, the biggest takeaway is I get to follow my curiosity, what intrigues me, what captures my interest. And then what happens is, as I continue to make these notes, it starts reflecting back to me what I'm interested in. And that's what they mean by having a dialogue partner, by this idea generating machine, is because it's notes that I've written in my own words, talking to the other notes that I've written in my own words that relate in different threads of conversation. And it's that feeling is what has sparked something in me where what am I doing? 42 daily lessons, videos with I don't know, what would compel me to do that? And it's that feeling that I get when I sit down and I don't have to think about the structure, when I don't have to think about where something is going to live. And then this enjoyment that happens when I add a new note to the notes that I've already done. And I just that's really that's just a glimmer. And I hope that comes across as he's just giving you a little glimmer of what's to come.
One question I have about the process, I haven't gotten to it in the book and I haven't seen it in your discussion, or I haven't followed it along in your videos. And I don't need an answer now, but when they talk about things surfacing later in a context that you don't know yet, right? You're taking a note and he's linking them to things that maybe he wrote about in the past. Like, oh, this links to something I wrote about 6 months ago. But finding it later in a way that you didn't even know, like, oh my goodness, yes, this completely ties into what I'm writing about now, and I'm glad I found it. If I can figure out how that works later, that's the big thing for me.
Yes.
Is because I want to write the note and then I want to forget it and move on to something totally different, and then hopefully discover my own thoughts.
Do you want to write the note? You want to write the note, connect the note so you can stumble upon it later and then forget it.
Right. Okay. I guess then the connection is what I want. So we'll get to that, I'm sure, but that's
we will.
The thing. Okay.
Relevant notes is what I hear you saying. We make the note, but the note doesn't live alone. It's going to live with the other notes that you've made. And if a note is a conversation, like a nested conversation, you're going to connect two different nested conversations. And you're going to have basically two different disparate ideas that you've connected now. And they're connected forever. And when you stumble upon a third note that rediscovers these two other notes, that's the insight.
Isn't the fact, Bo, that you can, the idea of atomicity, however whatever the adverb is or the adjective, the idea of it having to be an atomic note, right? It has to be a single idea in order for it to work in various different contexts and to be able to make multiple connections, right?
The idea and the thought or your note is it's at the base level. The granularity is the note itself, but it's how that note connects to other notes. So think about like the atom. An atom alone lives by itself. Sure, it's an atom, but when those atoms combine with other atoms, that's when you have this matter and Do you know what I'm saying? It's the note itself is atomic, but how it connects to the other notes is where the larger picture starts happening.
Exactly, and that's what I was saying, is that's why you're able to use it in different contexts, and maybe create new ideas, right? When you're combining the various atomic notes into different combinations, and they suggest different things depending on what your focus is at the time, what the context is.
Yes. Shall we?
Are we at he soon developed?
Are we? Oh, sorry. Did I go up one?
I'm sorry, I was reading on my own. I lost track of your shared screen somewhere in this clutter on my desktop.
No, you were on the right one. It's and it led him
And
to
it led
academia.
to, yeah, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the next
Oh, and it led, okay. And it led him to enter academia. One day he put some of these thoughts together into a manuscript and handed it over to Helmut Schelsky, one of the most influential sociologists in Germany. Schelsky took it home, read what this academic outsider had written, and contacted Luhmann. He suggested that he should become a professor of sociology in the newly founded University of Bielefeld. As attractive and prestigious as this position was, Luhmann wasn't a sociologist. He didn't have the formal qualifications required even to become an assistant for a sociology professor in Germany. He hadn't written habilitation, the highest academic qualification in many European countries, which is based on the second book after the doctoral thesis. He had never held a doctorate or even obtained a sociology degree. Most people would have taken the offer as a huge compliment, but point out the impossibility of it and move on. Not Luhmann. He turned to his slip box, and with its help, he put together a doctoral thesis and the habilitation thesis in less than a year while taking classes in sociology. Shortly after, in 1968, he was chosen to become professor of sociology at the University of Bielefeld, a position he would hold for the rest of his life.
In Germany, a professor traditionally starts with a public lecture presenting his or her projects. And Luhmann too was asked what his main research project will be. His answer would become famous. He laconically stated, "My project, Theory of Society, duration 30 years, costs 0. In sociology, a theory of society is the mother of all projects." When he finished,
I just want to say one thing. This is going to be Thursday's. This is going to be part of Thursday's daily lesson, and I guess I'll talk a little bit about it now. But it's going to be about knowing and understanding your why, or why you want a Zettelkasten. And when I see this, and that is a huge reason to want to be able to organize and have this idea generating machine. I mean, with a background unfit, that theory of society, that's what he was after. And I think having a powerful reason to want this is going to get us past the obstacles of making it happen. And it's seeing that Luhmann had a huge purpose. And I tapped into that as well, because when I was thinking about why I wanted this Zettelkasten, was because role after role that was being sent to me was this bullshit typecast acting roles. And I was like, I'm not going to have that anymore. There's so many people that look like me. Like, I was born in America, but you're still going to typecast me in this crazy nonsense. And it was like, no, there's stories that need to be told, and they're not being told. Well, I'm scared of the blank page. Well, there's a way to structure and have an idea generating machine, and I latched onto that. And I think it's important to realize why we want this. And that's going to be part of Thursday's daily lesson. But I just wanted to touch upon that if you look at Niklas Luhmann's reason, his project was the theory of society, which is a large, huge scope. But anyways, I'll let you keep going.
When he finished the final chapter, almost 29 and a half years later, as a 2-volume book with the title The Society of Society, it stirred up the scientific community. It was a radical new theory that not only changed sociology, but stirred heated discussions in philosophy, education, political theory, and psychology as well. Not everyone was able to follow the discussions, though. What he did was unusually sophisticated, very different, and highly complex. The chapters were published individually, each book discussing one social system. He wrote on law, politics, economy, communication, art, education, epistemology, and even love.
"29 and a half years. Commitment."
He nailed it. His estimate as well.
Set a goal,
Should I
you
go?
get a goal. Yes, please.
Okay. In 30 years, he published 58 books and hundreds of articles, translations not included. Many became classics in their respective fields. Even after his death, about half a dozen more books on diverse subjects like religion, education, or politics were published in his name, based on almost finished manuscripts lying around in his office. There are more than a few colleagues I know who would give a lot to be as productive in their whole lifetime as Luhmann was after his death. While some career-oriented academics try to squeeze as many publications out of one idea as possible, Luhmann seemed to do the opposite. He constantly generated more ideas than he was able to write down. His texts read as if he is trying to squeeze as much insight and as many ideas as possible into one publication. I can do one more. When he was asked if he missed anything in his life, he famously answered, "If I want something, it's more time. The only thing that really is a nuisance is the lack of time." And while some academics let their assistants do the main work or have a team that is writing the papers to which they add their names, Luhmann rarely had any assistants at all. The last assistant who worked for him swore blind that the only help he was able to give was to spot a few typos in his manuscripts here and there. Luhmann's only real help was a housekeeper who cooked for him and his children during the week. Not that extraordinary, considering he had to raise 3 children on his own after his wife died early. 5 warm meals a week, of course, do not explain the production of roughly 60 influential books and countless articles.
I just like to add something to that. I think that the fact that he had a housekeeper and the food, that makes a big difference. Like when I used to run a tax consultancy from my house, I just found that when I hired somebody to do the cleaning and the cooking and all of that, I was able to do like at least 25% more. Just simply because, I mean, if I had a Saturday off, the last thing I want to do is spend the entire day cleaning a house and getting groceries and doing all the food prep and everything and the headspace. And then my kids were just more needy, I guess. So just like for all of you, if you can afford it, like if you can pay someone to clean your house, even like that's minimum wage. Well, I was making way more than that per hour in my office. So it made more sense to hire those in. So that was really smart on his part, because a lot of people are always like, oh, I'll do it myself. But then look what he was able to produce simply because he took those things off, and he was able to provide local employment. So that is still contribution to the local economy.
Can I piggyback on that? It's even when I was coming up with my workflow in regards to capturing all my fleeting notes, I hired a virtual assistant that handles that. So they bring in all my audio recordings, all the source material, the website or wherever I got it from, the PDF photos that I screenshotted. They bring that over and have it on a page. And it doesn't cost me more than $120 a month at that. And it's basically because Roam doesn't have that ability. I have a simple template. All she has to do is copy, paste it into Roam, and I always have 12 ready to go. And so that way I'm not overwhelmed, but I still always, when I'm ready to get to work, I can just get to work. It's already waiting for me, if that makes sense.
So hey, Bo, when you have a few minutes, I'd love to talk to you about that, because I was actually looking at maybe hiring a VA to do exactly what you just said.
It's the best thing in the world. It's the best thing in the world.
Because I audio everything and I transcribe and I do meetings, and it's so overwhelming to try to like put it into something.
And it's really easy to teach because all they have to do is copy paste. As long as you give them the very simple template of like, this is all you need to do. Copy the link over here, hit Command K, that'll create the link. I want it like this. Make sure you check every morning. I have 12 ready to go because I can't get through 12 fleeting notes in a day. So it's like, make sure.
I'd love for you to chat to explain.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we get into week 5 and 6, we're going to go through every single point on that. And then it's also going to be it's very individualized, by the way. With the Zettelkasten, it's what system that works for each individual is going to be different because it's such a personalized thing. And so what you're going to need is going to be different than what I have. And I've noticed that. So once we get to week 5 and 6, that's really where we're going to talk about output and workflow.
Okay, thank you.
Foreshadowing.
Oh, I'm supposed to read, sorry. Are we on the after doing research part?
Yes.
Yeah. After doing extensive research on Luhmann's workflow, the German sociologist Johannes Schmidt concluded his productivity could only be explained by his unique working technique. That technique has never been a secret. Luhmann was always open about it. He regularly mentioned the slit box as the reason for his productivity. From as early as 1985, his standard answer to the question of how anyone could be so productive was, I, of course, do not think everything by myself. It happens mainly within the slit box. But few gave the slit box and the way he worked with a closer look, dismissing his explanation as the modest understatement of a genius. His productivity is, of course, impressive. But what is even more impressive than the sheer number of publications or the outstanding quality of his writing is the fact that he seemed to achieve all this with almost no effort. He not only stressed that that he never forced himself to do something he didn't like. He even said, I only do what is easy. I only write when I immediately know how to do it. If I falter for a moment, I put the matter aside and do something else. So this paragraph alone, I read this book a couple months ago, and this paragraph alone changed a lot of the way I do my own work. So I get because I have a couple of businesses I'm running, and sometimes when I'm doing one and I'm just hating what I'm doing right now, and I'm just going slow and I'm getting up 5 times to go to the bathroom, like everything other than working, then I actually was like, dang, I'm going to do this. And then I'll go and work on the other business and then just get going. And then I can come back to the other one and then just go, oh, it's so much more productive. It's crazy. Like, why did I think I had to push myself for 2 hours to finish this one thing? So now I'm like, oh, it's no fun anymore. So I just go do something else. And then I come back and it's fun again.
I think that's because it's state of mind. It's a mind state, and if the mind state isn't there, then the results that we get aren't as good. I mean, I don't want to slog through something when it's like, no, I want to enjoy it. I want my enthusiasm to come through. I want to have fun with it. Like, life is short. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is something that's feeding me,
Don't get as tired. And I think that's what I've really found. I'm probably 20% more productive in a day if I will do this. Sometimes I'll still oh, it's only going to take me 15 minutes, but then it actually takes an hour. I should have just quit and come back. But it's given me quite a bit more productivity to this one paragraph literally changed what I've been doing for 2 months, and it really helped.
Colby?
Let's see. His productivity, of course, is impressive. But what is more impressive was the sheer number of publications or the outstanding quality of his writing is the fact that he seemed to achieve all this with almost no real effort. He not only stressed that he never forced himself to do something he didn't feel like. Or did we already do this? He even said, I only do, okay. Here, I'll go on to the next one, sorry.
It's a good paragraph.
Yeah, there we go, eh? Okay, until recently, almost no one really seemed to believe it. We are still so used to the idea that a great outcome requires great effort that we tend not to believe that a simple change in our work routines could not only make us more productive, but the work also more fun. But doesn't it make much more sense that the impressive body of work was produced not in spite of the fact he never made himself do anything he didn't feel like, but because of it? Even hard work can be fun as long as it's intrinsic goals and we feel in control. The problems arise when we set up our work in such an inflexible way that we can't adjust it when things change and become arrested in a process that seems to develop a life of its own. The best way to maintain the feeling of being in control is to stay in control. And to stay in control, it's better to keep your options open during the writing process rather than limit yourself to your first idea. It is in the nature of writing, especially insight-oriented writing, that questions change. The material we work on will turn out to be very different from the one imagined, or that new idea emerge, which might change our whole perspective on what we do. Only if the work is set up in a way that is flexible enough to allow these small and constant adjustments can we keep our interests, motivation, and work aligned, which is the precondition to effortless or almost effortless work. You want me to keep reading or?
I know that Mariga had to leave.
There's a few people according to the chat.
Okay. Beverly's still here. You want to circle back?
Before we circle, I mean, I'll read next, obviously, but I just wanted to say when I read this book the first time, that was something that if I could have triple highlighted on my Kindle, I would have, which is about the questions changing and the material that we work with turns out to be very different from the one we imagined, or that new ideas emerge, which might change our whole perspective on what we do. And the reason why that seems so important to me is lots of times when I have a writing project which is generally legal oriented, I start out with a premise and I try to build around that premise, but it seemed to me that, you know, certain ideas do lend themselves to working that way, but many others lend themselves to just this concept that I would have triple underlined, which is, you know, don't start with your premise first. Let your premise develop.
Yeah. As I'm just going to elaborate on that too. Like, I'm really excited about that paragraph as well, because a lot of times, a lot of other systems I've used before, I'd have an idea of what I was going to be doing ahead of time, but you knew you had to start changing it. But because everything was structured in such a way, it was going to become a job unto itself to restructure, about to create the stuff. So now you're kind of stuck in a position where you don't have the time to readjust. You just got to keep going, even though you got a different idea now, because you can't restructure it in a timely fashion. At least that's the experience I've had.
Yeah, precisely. I've been in that situation many times.
Yeah, I kind of liken it to what I've read about fiction authors. And I know this doesn't, necessarily translate to fiction, but, I look at a fiction book and think I can never do that, because they have all these clever ways and plot lines that develop over time and they come up with this creative story. But as you read some of these authors, you say, how do you write your stories? They say, well, I have these characters and then they tell me what to do, right? They know enough about these characters and they're like, well, how would this person react? And then the nature of these characters take the story in the direction it's going to go. And that seems like how exactly what they're saying here is like, you don't necessarily have to write with a conclusion in mind. You have your notes, and if they're solid and well formed, you'll learn from yourself in the future. You'll find these insights, and then the piece will go in a direction that you had no idea when you started.
Well, yeah, I find it very interesting in the way they're talking here, because I think there's a lot of ways that most people actually think, but when we start taking notes, we kind of start changing, we kind of structure it because we don't know how to attach everything, because we've never had a note system before that could interconnect everything. Because for myself, like I'm doing stuff that a lot of my topics and concepts overlap, and this one overlaps, and trying to create a note structure was almost impossible before, because I was using like Evernote before, where I'm trying to hook this link up and this link up and this link up, but then I'd be like, oh my God, I just spent like 2 hours linking up and haven't written a single thing down.
Personally, I feel like this bottom-up emergent process and the system that allows it just leads to much more honest and accurate work, where you don't start with some conclusion and build around it, and where the structure just kind of constrains you to keep walking down this path. I really like the emergent process that Lumen and Sankey kind of talks about here.
Can I piggyback on that? I think, you know, I'm a firm believer that, you know, how we approach things in life spill over in all aspects of our life. And when I think about insight-oriented writing, I think about open-mindedness. And to me, I see it in the relationships that have sort of formed around me, where I'm just so much more open-minded because of the writing that I'm doing, where I'm not held in by like, it has to be this boxed in thing. And I love that. It's bottom up, and then it opens our mind. And I feel like the more people that are living life with an open mind, that resonates and that ripples out. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I agree with the theory. I'm just having troubles implementing it, but that's why I'm excited to take this book course this time.
Shall I continue on?
I just wanted to add on Vincent, what he was saying about emergence. I've definitely found that two of the things that I think are like also a part of like the principles is making sure you're diverging, and also like the principle of emergence, which is something that's bottom up, which I think like being neurodivergent, like Rome was perfect because it works like my thinking. I know Connor was also neurodivergent, so it makes complete sense why I meet a lot of people who also like are also like naturally divergent thinkers. The thing that I've struggled with the most is getting that emergence to happen more. I know like you talked, Bo, about like the connecting the notes. That's something that I feel like I've been using Roam since last July. So like I feel like that's something that's probably not stressed or like made like that idea is not being pushed enough on the importance of making sure you connect your notes and making that an important part of like the process. Yeah.
That's a good point, Eric, because when I started too, I've been on since as soon as I was on the waiting list. So whenever they opened up, and everyone's like, just dump it in for now, worry about the structure later. Well, now I'm like, I'm going to use the word shit, because I'm like, literally I almost want to hire somebody to go back and like go and put all my notes in, because I just can't imagine how long. I like literally just started hucking everything in from my Journey One, my Google Keep, with like no tags, no nothing, just like put dates on with the block. And now I'm freaking out because I'm like, it's just a big mess. I'm like, I don't even know if I should just
So
start.
not to diverge too much from the book, but you bring up an interesting point. I've been on Roam for a while, but I'm still haven't used as much as I want to. If you were to start over and from day one, from all the stuff that you put in, if you were to pick one or two things that you would do differently, what would that be?
Definitely the link, the cross linking or the back linking, just making sure. I didn't really understand how the blocks worked. I mean, now that I've done quite some work and some academic work in there, definitely more so. So I think just, well, something that I learned from one is I'd recommend anyone who's going to do it to use Sonke's book, but he said, think about where you want to find it in the future. And that's where I'd go back now. So if I was starting all over, I'd say to someone, where do you want to find it in the future? And then that's what you would tag with it. Not where it is right now, where would you find it in the future? And that has helped me, and I've changed that in the last month. I'm doing better at that.
Which brings up the point that I raised early, Bo. If you can show us, you know, from your findings, how can I find these things in the future so I can link them together? That's the whole point.
What if the linking wasn't happening with a word, but it was happening with what that word meant in context? How do you explain that?
We don't have to explain it tonight. We'll get there.
Yeah, but it's almost like everyone is, what I've realized is that everyone is stumbling because they want to connect it. I think about Xiaomi, and I think about how he structured his notes, and I think about how others have sort of structured their notes into a page, and they're using the Zettelkasten, the analog Zettelkasten, but they're copy pasting that into Roam or into Notion or whatever, and they're forgetting that the physical slip box had limitations. There's a limitation in the physical slip box. You can only pull up to how many notes. And what they do when you copy paste or duplicate it is those inherent limitations from a physical slip box are carried over into the digital realm when you don't have to. And because of that, I feel like everyone is missing the point of, everyone's missing this point of like, there's a way to connect this where you're not just putting a hashtag and forgetting about it, but you're going, I'm going to connect this so I can stumble upon this later. And I can't get to that point without like, it's almost, it's like calculus. It's like, you can't get to calculus without geometry, algebra, trig, you know what I mean? And you have to build up to it.
I'll trust that we'll get there. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to it if it gets to that point.
I don't think you can rush it though. Because it's a habit.
I don't know. Yeah, none of us expected to.
No need to. Just as long as I know that we'll get there, then.
Yeah, we will. And have it individualized so it's just for you. And it works for you because it's yours, because you created it, because it's personalized. It's an idea generating machine that works, that's idiosyncratic to what you need and how you put information in and how you want to resurface that information in your own words. That's the most important thing.
I think one thing, I guess, would be helpful for because I try to introduce Roam to other people who I believe could benefit from it, because like just seeing like how they take notes and stuff. Like I have a lot of friends who do debate, and yeah, they'll have tons of notes, and they know how to do all the other principles of like summarizing, but just not connecting ideas. And for me, one thing that I think could be done better is reducing the amount of time for like someone who uses Roam to actually like get that first, like completing that job, right? You know, we all have like either a social, emotional, or functional job for the reason why we picked up Roam. And it's not until you get that first insight that you could trust the way that you're doing things working. So like, if you continue to try other people's like processes and you don't end up actually getting those insights, it usually just causes more confusion. And I think that's part of like the community wanting to do so many different things, like makes it harder for other people to try to like get in. Yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I think there's every single one of us has a list of people that we would want to be able to think more open-mindedly, you know, someone to think for themselves. I know every single one of us has a list for that, people that we would wish could think clearer, think better, see where they're wrong, see where they're right, and have it something where they can, you know, leave something behind. And it's, yeah. I mean, yeah, today's lesson is gonna be talking about a little bit about that too, about the pain and frustrations of getting bit, you know, getting bit by all these different note-taking systems and all these different apps and tools, and going, ow, ow. And of course, we're gonna be hesitant when we see a new tool, a new shiny tool, and we're like, you know, well, I'm gonna keep you right here, okay? Because last time you bit me.
This also isn't, I mean, I know we're studying it for purposes of like writing content potentially. However, when I first started this, I was writing a proposal to the federal government for a budget thing. And I wrote it last summer, forgot about a lot of what I wrote about because a lot of life has happened since then. And one of the politicians phoned me last week to talk to me about some parts of my brief. And not everything was in the brief. It's got a word count. But while she was asking me questions, I was literally able to go on my Roam and pull up, like, she's like, what are the cons of doing this? What are this? And I was like, holy crap, I can't believe how fast I could pull it up. And I'd had a conversation with this politician in the past, and I had transcribed part of my conversation with her, and I could go back and go, do you remember when we talked about this on this date? And I had it highlighted and pulled over, and some of it was already like, I knew I was having a meeting with her. So I'd already pulled over a bunch of my notes by copy referencing some of my notes from other conversations. And she was like, wow, you're so prepared. Like, it literally took me 10 minutes to prepare. And she thought I'd spent like hours, but I had spent a ton of time when I prepared my paper. But just so you know, like, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, I rocked the meeting without having to do much work.
Can I challenge you? The challenge, how I'd like to challenge you is, what if you didn't even have to go back to those notes? What if you, like, what I mean by that is, you know, as we build a Zettelkasten, is we don't have to, because it's almost like we're doing an inherent spaced repetition of the notes that we've already written over time. Because every time I create a new note, it doesn't live by itself. I have to look through all the different notes that I've already made. So as I do that, I continually look over the ideas that have been crystallized over time. And so even if I have hundreds of these permanent notes, I keep going back to it. And so then it's not that I even need these notes. Well, I mean, I guess a meeting note would be different, but in regards to actual knowledge, then it's like, it's rooted.
Like a spaced repetition, built-in spaced repetition.
It's exactly what it is. That's the thing that blows my mind. And he talks about this in the book as well.
But then sometimes you need specifics. So like, I could recall the concepts, but some of the things were like a nitty-gritty tax things.
Yeah, like meeting note stuff. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. But what was even awesome, I hate emailing, and she asked me 2 questions and I answered them part of the way. And then when I got off the phone, I was like, oh yeah, I really need to make sure she knows these points. But I literally copied and pasted them. I knew exactly how to find them in my Roam, and I copied and pasted them right into an email, and I didn't have to spend an hour writing them up. I'm like, hey, here's some follow-ups to those questions you asked me. Whatever, and here's the information and the links to them. So just so you know, like, it doesn't have to be just for writing. It worked really well for speech.
Yeah.
Do you transcribe the meeting notes, like the dialogue that you record it and then have it transcripted?
Yeah, a lot of meetings that I have, I use Otter for everything. Even my Zoom has Otter attached to it. And then, because otherwise when I dictate in something else, you have to put periods in, and it definitely doesn't sound good when you're listening to it again, but Otter does a really great job. So I transcribe it in there. Depending on who it is, I share the notes right through there. So if they want to use them, it's up to them. And then I pull them over, depending on how important the meeting is, I pull them into Roam and then just highlight sections that I know I'm going to reuse or points that came up.
Thank you.
By the way, this meeting is being auto recorded as well. I just posted the link in there for a live transcription.
I love it. It's a really good app.
Okay. Do we want to? How long have we been going here? 6:30. Have we gone for 2 hours? Is that 2 hours? Yeah.
Yeah, we're right at 2.
Well, do you want to finish this chapter, or should we just bookmark it here?
I think there's a few more paragraphs. I mean,
Yeah.
you wanna
Yeah. Let's might as well get through it. That way we could. Yeah, because this is. Yeah, let's might as well get through this because
Okay.
I do need to prepare for the daily lesson for today as well.
I think just finish the chapter.
Okay,
Who's up?
I think I'm up, huh? I guess.
Yeah.
Should we burn through the end here?
Do it.
All right. Luhmann was able to focus on the important things right in front of him, pick up quickly where he left off, and stay in control of the process because the structure of his work allowed him to do this. If we work in an environment that is flexible enough to accommodate our work rhythm, we don't need to struggle with resistance. Studies on highly successful people have proven again and again that success is not the result of strong willpower and the ability to overcome resistance, but rather the result of smart working environments that avoid resistance in the first place. Instead of struggling with adverse dynamics, highly productive people deflect resistance, very much like judo champions. This is not just about having the right mindset, it's also about having the right workflow. It is the way Luhmann and his slipbox worked together that allowed him to move freely and flexibly between different tasks and levels of thinking. It's about having the right tools and knowing how to use them. And very few understand that you need both. People still search for Luhmann's secret, putting down his remarkable output to him being a genius, or even thinking that they only need his slipbox and they would be set. Sure, you need to be smart to be successful in academia and writing, but if you don't have an external system to think in and organize your thoughts, ideas, and collected facts, or have no idea how to embed it in your overarching daily routines, the disadvantage is so enormous that it just can't be compensated by a high IQ. Should I go, or Omar? As far as the technology is concerned, there is no secret. It has all been in the open for more than 3 decades now. So why is not everybody using a slipbox and working effortlessly towards success? Is it because it is too complicated? Certainly not. It is rather surprisingly simple. The reasons are much more mundane. And those are, until very recently, when the first results from the research on the file system were published, some crucial misunderstandings prevailed about how Luhmann actually worked, which led to disappointing results for many who tried to emulate the system. The main misunderstanding stems from an isolated focus on the slipbox and a neglect of the actual workflow in which it is embedded. 2, almost everything that is published about this system was only accessible in German and was almost exclusively discussed within a small group of devoted sociologists who specialized in Luhmann's theory of social systems, hardly the kind of critical mass that would draw much attention. 3, the third and maybe the most important reason is the very fact that it is simple. Intuitively, most people do not expect much from simple ideas. They rather assume that impressive results must have equally impressively complicated means.
Joe? The contemporaries of Henry Ford did not understand why something as simple as a conveyor belt should be that revolutionary. What difference does it make to let the cars move from worker to worker instead of letting the workers walk from car to car? I would not be surprised if some of them even thought Ford as being simple-minded and overly enthusiastic about a rather minor change in work organization. It is only on hindsight that a scale of the advantages of this small tweak became obvious to everyone. I wonder how long it will take until the advantages of human robots and work routines become equally obvious to everyone. Or by then, everyone already have known it all along the way. Whatever the results were, the word is out now and it wouldn't be surprised if it spreads fast.
I think if I can add one thing to that, it's that the word is out, but I feel like the reason that it hasn't spread fast is because technology. We're inundated. We're so much information overload. And it's to be able to slow things down in order to have a Zettelkasten, to have a workflow in a Zettelkasten. It's sort of counterintuitive to the speed in which everything that we're being overwhelmed with. And so that's, in my opinion, I think that's why this small little tweak in how we work and what we're already doing in regards to taking notes and reading and consuming information, I think that's what it is. We're forgetting to slow things down. So I want to thank everybody for showing up, you know, for this, but also showing up for yourself. And, you know, it's exciting to see us all say, you know, we're bad at something, you know, we're struggling with something. Like, I'm scared of this, you know. I think that right there gives fertile soil for real community and growth. And I'm just grateful to be a part of it. Really, I am. And thank you.
Hey, I'm thankful that we've got somebody so passionate about something that I want to learn greatly about. So I went through this one in 2, Book Club 2. I saw it's coming back for 3. I'm like, okay, this is my time. Once again, planting my flag. Let's commit. Let's learn it.
And I really felt like the only way to do this was to, there was no way that I could do coaching sessions one-on-one for everybody and get, like, me and Beverly did one for like 2.5 hours, but it still wasn't enough. There was so much more to, like, okay, let's figure out how to do it in Rome. And then it was like, well, how am I going to do this? And it was like, you know who it was? Matt McKinley was pushing me. He was encouraging me throughout the entire holidays. And he was like, you know, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And so I just felt like the best way to do it would be to have everything that have all, like, finding the patterns in all the different sessions and then pulling that all together into this thing where you can go back to it and it's all there. And it's just, yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. But honestly, like, this is like insight. Like, I'm being honest. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen, you know, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. My fingers are crossed that, you know, separating into 42 days is going to work. But, you know, it's that uncertainty and that fear of going, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to do it anyways. And that's, you know, obviously I'm going to give it everything I've got. And I don't think it takes a genius to see that there's a pattern. Obviously there's a pattern that's formed through talking to all these literally random strangers over Zoom and going, dude, okay, this, like, people have to figure, like, it's not hard. It's really not hard, but you have to explain why that works inside of Rome and why it works in Rome differently. And I really, that's my driving force. My driving force is to make sure that everyone that's part of this gets to that point. And yeah. And so thank you for everyone. And I have to finish my daily lesson for today. I'm late, but I promise you I'll start getting into a stride, and I'll start getting a day ahead. And that way, right at GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, they'll be up and they'll be ready to go. Thank you so much. I'm going to go and upload this video. I'm saving it to the computer right now. I'll upload it to the page itself. And if you want to listen back, you can listen back, and I will see you all next week. Bye.
Thanks, Bo. This was great.
Bye.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.